Good morning and welcome to another episode of Talking to Artists, casual conversation with professional artists so that art lovers, art collectors, and aspiring artists can understand a little bit about what goes on in the life of a professional artist. Today I'm really excited to talk to Deanne Fitzpatrick. She is an artist who does rug hooking, which I have always been fascinated with but never done myself. She actually came as a recommendation for one of my listeners, which I really appreciate. And so it's super exciting for me to be able to talk to somebody who I've never met before and not talked to before, and who does something that's really different and interesting than what I do. So I'm just going to see if she's here and invite her on. I don't see her quite yet, so hopefully she will join us in a few minutes. Other than that, let's see. Oh, no. Sorry, I have to keep my glasses on because I can't see. So a couple of other things that are happening. Of course, we're still at the cottage studio in isolation, which has been wonderful and very inspiring. And I finally got my groove back, which has helped. It's taken me a while. Here's Deanne. Pretty excited to kind of be back in the studio and creating again because it's been a while. Okay, and so we will wait for Deanne. I think it's Deanne. I guess she'll let me know. We're just waiting for her to join. And again, if there's anybody else that you can think of that you would like to hear me interview, that would be fabulous because it's getting pretty exciting. I've got somebody coming on from the UK. She reached out to me, and so I'm looking forward to talking to her. She does sort of line drawings. Just to let you know, next week on next Thursday's Talking to Artists will actually be on Friday at 11 o'clock. I've got an appointment that I can't change, so we're going to talk to Laurie Scantos on Friday instead of Thursday. Sorry, and now I'm babbling because I'm waiting for Hooking Rugs to join, and she seems to be having a bit of a challenge. Okay, she has requested to join. Let's see if we can make this happen. Okay. Seems to be an issue, as there always is when you don't want there to be. Okay, I just accepted your request. And
there we go.
Hi.
Hi, how are you, Kate?
I'm great. How are you?
Great. Yeah, sorry it took me a few minutes to get on. I haven't done this before, but thank you for inviting me.
Well, I'm really excited to talk to you. Yeah, and I'm never sure either. Oops, sorry, my thing's bouncing here. And is it Deanne or Deanna?
It's Deanne.
Deanne. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I got that right. So yeah, I think you're the first person I've talked to who I have actually not met, not seen in an art show. So I'm pretty excited. I think this is kind of part of the thing I love about talking to artists is just reaching out to people I don't know.
Yeah, I do too. I like that. I enjoy it myself. Learn a lot.
Excellent. So obviously, I was in a little bit of an introduction is talking about how you do rug hooking as an art, and I just loved reading a little bit about kind of the history and how that's come from. You're based in, I think, Amherst, Nova Scotia, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and talking about kind of the history and how you got into it. So maybe you could share a little bit about that because I thought that was fascinating.
So I bought an old house, really. It's just simply, that's what I did. I bought an old house and I wanted hooked mats for the floor. When I was about 17 years old, my sister had these hooked mats around her house. And I remember when I was a little girl, this older woman in our community, she hooked mats. So I didn't really grow up with it, but I was familiar with it. And then when I was 24, I had my first home and I wanted mats for the floor. And I just went off with a couple of my sisters to learn how to hook. And I just, I don't know.
You got addicted.
Sometimes you pick something up and you just know that it belongs to you and you belong to it. It's just a good fit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so is rug hooking kind of part of the tradition of Nova Scotia, or is it just something that it happens to be more traditional, an older tradition that you just kind of have to come across?
It is a tradition of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. I grew up in Newfoundland, and it is a really strong tradition. Like my mother and both my grandmothers hooked rugs. I didn't know my grandmothers, but yeah, it's an old craft. And it was done like what would happen was people would use sacks, like feed sacks that potatoes and things came in, and then they would use their old clothes, and somebody would make a hook out of a nail into a piece of wood. And so it was really about using what you had, and people like my grandmother, whom I didn't know, would design rugs by like taking a piece of charred coal from her fire and drawing it on burlap. It was just, a really traditional craft kind of born out of necessity. My mother said when I started hooking rugs, she was like, "What are you doing that for? Like, why would you?" And she said, "It's nothing but a chore of poverty." That's what she said. I love
Well, I
those
guess you
words.
can, yeah, that's really poetic because I guess in the sense too that you don't have to do it. So obviously it's
No.
not hopefully a chore of poverty, but you've chosen to because it also taps into some of that history and women's work and what was kind of expected to be able to create magic out of whatever you had around you.
Yeah, right on. It's right. That's true.
But you must have also kind of felt like, oh my gosh, we've come forward and now you're going backwards again.
Yeah, absolutely did. But my mother in her late 60s, and then when my mother turned 70, she hadn't hooked since she was like 5 years old. And after I started hooking, my mother only lived until she was 72, but in the last 2 years of her life, she made about 8 or 10 rugs. So
Wow.
she came back. Yeah, yeah, she came back to it as a craft, really. I would draw them out for her and get all the wool ready, and she would hook them. Yeah.
Well, do think there's something kind of, even as a simple thing like gardening, for example, when I was a kid and, you were forced to weed your parents' garden and you hated
Yeah.
it. But then when you have your own garden, you've got your own way of doing things and your own designs, it's very different. And there is something I think that taps into your creativity, but also into your history and being part of a bigger past, maybe.
Yes, there definitely is. I think, I don't know, tradition to me, the feeling that this was something that was in my family for generations, it doesn't legitimize it, but it sort of internalizes it a bit
Yeah.
more. Like something that, this is why I love it so much. It's, in my DNA, perhaps. I don't know. Yeah.
And so
Muscle memory.
do you have a lot of your grandmother's rugs and stuff around you right now, or were they kind of used
No,
and gone and tossed?
they're gone. Yeah. We do have some of my mother's, but none of my grandmother's. Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, maybe you could explain to me. Actually, I don't know if you knew too. I came across your name a couple of ways because I had two people who watched Talking to Artists who recommended I talk to you. At the same time, I was actually looking for a rug hooking hook kit for my daughter, and I couldn't find anything that had nice designs. And so I reached out to a friend of my mom's who does rug hooking, and she connected me with you as well. So I thought that was kind of an interesting kind of circle. But maybe you could talk a bit
Yeah.
about actually what you do and how you do it, because I'm really not that familiar with the craft.
So we use a backing that looks like burlap, but it's actually linen most of the time. You can hook on burlap too. And then I take wool cloth and I cut it into strips that are about uh, a quarter of an inch wide. And then I hook it onto the linen. So the first step for me would be to take the linen and draw something on it, or maybe not draw very much. Like you can see a couple of rugs behind me, and
Mm-hmm.
there's another bunch over there. Sorry, I don't want to start making people dizzy, but there's some
Oh,
more.
they're so
Um,
beautiful, though.
thank you. And you can go on my website. There's lots of them on there if you want to see them. But it's about taking. It's only one stitch, so you just take the hook, and if you want, I can show you. I have a tripod and I can show
Sure.
you. But
That'd be
yeah,
really cool. I'd
okay.
love that.
Let's do that. Let's see if I can
Okay.
move my tripod over here. Just bear with me for a second. I'm going to have to turn this sideways.
Okay.
So I'm working on a rug right now, and I'll have like a big bag of mixed materials, lots of yarn and cloth.
So it's a combination of yarn and cloth, is it?
Yeah, combination of yarn and cloth. And I use like silk and I'm working on linen, and I'm using silk and wool. And it matters to me a lot what I use because I just figure it's not really, I don't want to say it's I don't know. I don't like the feeling of polyester
Yeah.
and
Well, it
acrylic
kind
that
of
much
feels
in
like
my
if this is
hands
a
because
craft
they're,
that's based in history, that it's nice to kind of use more historic and natural fibers too.
yeah, you got it. So here I am just pulling it up loop by loop, right? And it's just one stitch. And then, so that's a cloth piece, like the sari.
Hmm.
And then
What did you call that?
it's sari silk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So
And so
that's
are
it. It's
the
really, really
would
simple.
you would you say these are designed to sort of be on the floor, or are they more kind of pieces of art that go on the wall?
They're more designed for the wall. Like right now, I have a show at the Art Gallery in Nova Scotia, and there's 22 pieces, and they're all framed simply like in wooden frames, and they'll all those pieces are really designed for the wall, but you can still make mats for the floor. I don't make as many mats for the floor because, you know, I have the opportunity to sell them as art for the walls. But right at Christmas, someone bought a rug and said that they wanted it for their floor, and it doesn't offend me one bit. I mean, art's art, wherever you want to put it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's like when people buy my art and they're putting it in the bathroom and they're afraid to tell me, and I'm like, well, you know, you spend a lot of time in the bathroom, so.
Yeah, nice thing. I have original art. I know it's not the best place for original art because of all the moisture, but I want it there, you know, because you are there.
You get to see it.
Yeah.
And so do you, I always find it's interesting because something like a rug typically would be considered in the craft area, and then there's kind of fine craft and artisan craft and fine art. Where on that continuum do you think you fit, or does it depend on what you're producing?
Well, I think it does depend on what I'm producing. Like, we produce a lot of kits and a lot of patterns, and I feel like they are craft. And I think fine craft for me is more about the technique with which you do something. And art for me is about how, and it's not about really what medium you're using, but how and why you do it. So I feel like, you know, whether it's, if you're sculpting from a kit, it's more craft. Do you know what I mean? But if you're sculpting
Because
from
you're doing what's been kind of told, you're told what to do, you follow the steps and you produce something, right?
yeah, and that's more like in the nature of, in my mind, in the nature of craft. But there's all kinds of people who are doing things that are traditionally thought of as craft that are without a doubt fine artists. Like, I know so many who are fine artists, really, you know, who are artists. I mean, I don't even know why we need to say fine artist or fine craft and art. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess it just seems some shows it's interesting because the dividing line seems to be if it's functional or not, functional art versus non-functional art. And so I know it's interesting because with yours it would be like, okay, it's on the wall, it's not functional, it's on the floor, it's functional. So, you know, how do you structure that, or how do you
It's more about like
categorize it?
what you put into it. Like, if it's your
Yeah.
own original ideas, and if it's your own original thoughts, and, you know, and what the process is like. For me, that's what sort of distinguishes it. So if you're coming up with your own original ideas, and you have your own way and your own techniques and your own style, then I think you're very much in the art. Like, I never question anymore whether or not I'm an artist. I just know that I am. Yeah.
Yeah, and you do all your designs anyway, right? So you're designing all of your own pieces and your colors and I mean, the technique would presumably change depending on what you're doing and how you're blending the colors and stuff.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's so cool. I'm actually really excited to actually purchase one of your kits and do the craft part of it because, you know, it's always nice to be able to take your own art as well. Like, I'm kind of thinking, you know, you take your own art and how do you kind of, I don't know, execute it in different ways. It's kind of fun as well.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's just it's a pleasure. What, I got to ask you a quick question, may I?
Yeah.
Yeah. What brought you to doing this live Instagram? I just find it really interesting that you do this.
You know, a lot of it is I'm a high extrovert. I love people. I do probably about 20 shows a year, and I really travel a lot for my art shows, and I love that. And then when COVID hit and we were sort of really restricted, I was just kind of lonely. Like, I missed, you know, I had, of course, my close group of people around me. What I really missed were those conversations. There's serendipitous conversations with people that you don't really know that just go in a direction that is unexpected.
Yeah.
And I think for me it was interesting, but also just kind of kept my brain going.
Yeah.
I'd been thinking about doing a podcast for a couple of years, but I was always kind of caught up in having to understand what the technology is and what the structure is and what kind of 17 questions am I going to ask. And so when I started this, I'm like, I don't want to do that. I just want to have a conversation and see where it goes. And if it's not interesting and no one listens, that's fine. But for me, I get something out of it, you know, and so far people have enjoyed it. So.
And so, can we listen to your other podcasts on your Instagram feed, or how do we, like, once they're
so they're on my Instagram feed. They're also on Facebook, and they're actually also at youtube.com/Kate Taylor Art. And I am in the process of actually separating the audio and making it into a proper podcast, which I'll probably put on Spotify. So I just have to figure out some RSS feeds and crap like that, which I haven't done yet.
Yeah. I do a podcast too, and I just agree. Like, it's sometimes just great company, just talking to other people who have similar interests to you, and it's just a real good thing.
And And I think it's neat. It's just neat too to be able to meet new people and talk to new people and expand your own kind of network. And I think some of these, even with artists that I kind of knew quite well, because I started off with people I knew because I thought, well, if it really screws up, they'll forgive me, for bad technology and stuff. But even
Yeah.
with them, you have a conversation and you learn something new, or you think about something in a different way, and that informs your own work, and it helps you kind of build your own art practice too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's part of it. I also like to talk to artists, other artists, professional artists especially, about their art practice and how they promote their work and how they sell it and how they structure their business to be kind of financially viable and to kind
Yeah.
of move away from this starving artist kind of stereotype, which I hate.
Yeah. I know, because it isn't true.
I
I don't
know.
I know so many artists who are just have great careers and good livelihoods. It just isn't true anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think now that, especially in the last 10 years, where artists have gotten the opportunity to take control of their own sales, and there's more opportunity. I think more people, there are a lot more artists now too. It
Yeah.
seems, yeah. So you go to sales and sell your art at like art sales.
Yeah, I love doing art fairs. So I've done, so I do like the one of a kind in Chicago and San Diego and New York, and I did one in Barcelona. And I just, part of it too is an opportunity to travel, because who doesn't love to travel, right? You can write it
Yeah.
all off because you're going there for an art show.
Yeah.
But I also just love the fact that, in these groups, you reconnect with these artists who live around the world that you
Yeah.
kind of see once or twice a year. And I just think that's super fun.
Yeah. I can see
How
that.
about you? I mean, obviously you've got your kits that you sell, you've got your
No.
podcast, I think you've got books you've written, so you're super
Yeah,
crazy busy too.
I sell most of my work through the studio here. Like I have a big space in a small community in downtown, but when people travel, we get lots of visitors. And I sell a lot online. Hookingrugs.com is my website address. And I
Yeah.
have a gallery there that I sell like my original art. And I also have, supplies and kits and patterns. So I love teaching too. I don't know if you teach, but I do a lot of teaching online, and I like, when things were different, I like to teach in the studio. But teaching
Mm-hmm.
is a big part of my I find it very artful teaching. You really have, when you're developing curriculum and ideas, you really have to be creative and inventive. So I do a lot of that too. So that's sort of how, those are the three ways that I make my living.
It kind of feeds you. Yeah. I'm not a great teacher. I'm not very patient, I have to say. But what I do have is I have a business, excuse me, with another artist called Talking to Artists. Sorry,
Yeah.
excuse me. Or not. No, called Creative Adventures. And it's creativity retreats for non-artists. So
Okay.
I really enjoy, and it's kind of, it's a one day, have a glass of wine or a mimosa and eat and chat and drink, and then do hand painted silk scarves, or I'll do a painting class or encaustic or something like that.
Oh,
Because which I think that sounds like you kind of do that as well. Like you're kind of trying to tap into kind of rug hooking as an entry point with your kits, and to sort of starting to tap into your creativity. And I
yes.
think, again, there are so many people that, you must run into this as well. It's like, oh, I'm not creative. I could never do that. I'm like, well, you are creative. You painted as kids. You did stuff as kids. So how to tap back into that as an adult?
Yeah, and you get up every day and you dress, and many women are really involved in making their homes beautiful, and men too. But most of the people that I teach are women, I have to say. We get like
Yeah.
maybe 5% men, like small amount, but they are already creative. But people, the one thing is they can't draw. And I always say, like, you don't have, like, if you can't draw a straight line, you're at a really good starting point, because
Yeah.
like you can just you don't have to be able to draw. You just need to be able to think and design and create, and
And
you can
play.
and play. And there's all kinds of tools that can help you now with the drawing and the
Yeah.
designing and the making. Yeah.
Well, I find that too. So with Creative Adventures, really, it's the same thing. It's about, you know, I can walk you through how I'm going to do an abstract painting, but I don't want you to copy my painting. I want you to use those techniques to sort of just tap into your own thing and just play and experiment and see what comes of something, and I find that really rewarding. I don't have personally the patience to create like a whole curriculum, so I'm kind of the same way I do talking to artists off the cuff. These
Yeah.
creative adventures are a little bit like that too. I mean, they take a lot of planning, but the actual day is about
Where do you
fun.
the creative adventures?
So we were doing them. We partnered with a couple of art galleries. We did with
Yep.
Petrov Gallery, which was great. We did some at this place called Alton Mills, which is an art center just north of Toronto. I'm located in Toronto.
Mhm.
We were looking at doing some actually on the East Coast and the West Coast. I used to run executive level events, so we're kind of with Angela. So we've done this we've taken our experience there and our contacts. But then, of course, we were just ramping up and COVID hit. And people were saying, well, you can do it online, but it's like, but the point is to bond and to laugh and to be goofy, and that's harder to kind of do online. So
Yeah, it's a different experience online. It's more of the
yeah,
self-learning for sure.
yeah. So we've kind of put it a little bit on hold. We might come back to it now. The COVID's going to be another 6 months or so.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that's okay.
excuse me, dying over here. So the other thing I thought was really interesting, and just looking at your website and talking to you too about this whole kind of gateway into creativity and enjoying yourself. And your past was you were a therapist, I understand,
Yeah.
which I think is fascinating.
I did a master's degree in counseling at Acadia, and the year that I graduated was 1990, and that year I learned how to hook rugs, like the same, I think it was like a week before I graduated or something. And I did work as a therapist part-time for about 3 years while I was starting out, and I had worked at it for 2 years before while I was doing my master's. So yeah, I feel like, I mean, that was what I intended to do, but I feel like I've helped a lot of people through rug hooking and through creativity in just as many ways as I would have sitting and listening or, doing therapy with them. I feel like, in a way, I mean, I'd studied counseling. So in a way, it was all about bringing people to themselves. That was what I wanted to do. And I think that's what I've done, but through a tool, and
Yeah.
is rug hooking. And I think whenever you sit, and I'm sure painting must be the same. I paint a little, not very much, but I paint a little. And anytime you do something a little, you never really get good at it. You know what I mean? You gotta get good at it. So I think it must be the same. But when I sit with my hook and I sit still for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever, I try to break a lot because hooking is sort of physically, it's quite repetitive. So you come to yourself. You're left to you've left the room and you're just sitting with yourself and you're thinking about what you need to think about. And it's very meditative, and it's, it brings you, I think it brings you closer to a lot more self-understanding. If you're reflective, if you have a reflective nature, certainly it's good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think I always find too, it's nice to get to kind of just get into the zone and let your brain be free as opposed to always kind of controlling everything around you.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're at that point where, I don't know, with meditation, it's like a thought comes and it goes. It's like the little bird that flies off. If you've ever taken any meditation courses, just don't, you're not, you don't even, you're not hanging on to thoughts. They're just coming and
Yeah.
going, and you're lost in your flow, right? And which is where you want to get to, where you don't really know time is passing and you're not craving chips. You're just really
Or chocolate, yeah, Oreo cookies maybe.
yeah, you're not like, oh no, you're just happy doing what you're doing. And you don't know whether it's 1:30 or quarter to 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have any sort of rituals as you go into the studio to kind of get you going and get you into that mindset?
I've been taking some online courses and fooling around, and a lot of artists do have rituals. They light a candle, like whatever. I walk every morning. I walk for about 40 minutes every morning, and it's a very important part of my artistic life, that walking. Because it is another time when thoughts are just coming and going, and but also you're just seeing shapes inside. I walk the same road every day, but I try to see it differently every day. So it's a really good exercise to try to find something new to interest you, because it's the same with painting. If you've been painting for a long time, or if you're making rugs for a long time, you've sort of gone over a lot of the themes that you initially started out with. And so
Yeah.
still, those themes are still important to you, but you're always trying to see them in new ways. So my rituals would be to walk, and then I have a little studio in my house, and then I have a studio downtown, which is more of a public space, and is to take that walk and go up there and, you know, just walk up the stairs with my cup of coffee. And I you know, I don't really, you know, I don't light a candle. I don't have a little process, which I admire when people have that, but I don't. I'm just like, I just show up. I make sure I show
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Well, that's a critical part of success, isn't it? Just showing up.
You got to be you got to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I find too, it's like it is something about just even physically being in the studio, and even if you aren't necessarily productive in terms of painting or hooking, like I find there's other things to do around the
Yeah.
business. And for me, it's like edges or preparing panels or whatever, right? That, you know, starts to get you into that zone.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. And it's my little studio at home is the room that I spend most of my time in. So it's the place where I read. It's the place where I write, you know, and it's the place where if I'm going to make something, anything, you know, if I've got to put things together, if I have to wrap presents, whatever, I'll do it there. It's like my workspace. It's got a great bench, and it's got a desk, and it's got a chair. And in the evenings, I'll, you know, settle in there and watch Foyle's War or something. Like it's the place where I live. Like it's, you know, it's like I
Yeah.
know fine if I end up in one room somewhere sometime, because that's what I'm always in that room, to be honest. Yeah.
And your studio that you've got, that's a kind of external retail space. I'm assuming that's closed now, or is it open, or?
No, it's open. We are open in Nova Scotia. We are allowed to be open, and everybody is open. We have very few cases, and we're 6 feet apart and wearing masks when we're together. I have a bunch of people who work with me to make the kits and stuff. So we are allowed to be open. Yeah, it's fairly safe here right now. Now that can change on a dime. We've had, well, like everybody else, we were closed to the public for quite a while, but we are open now, thankfully. But mostly we may only have 2 or 3 people drop in during the day right now, when normally, you know, you might have 10 or 15 in the winter. Like the winter's always our quiet time. In the summer, you might have 50 or 60 or 70 during the height of tourist season. So it just depends on what's going on. Yeah. We are the first town in Nova Scotia. So when people were traveling and driving, they pretty much had to drive through here to get to Halifax, or, you know, if you're going to Prince Edward Island, or if you're going to New Brunswick, we're right in the center of all of that. We're kind of a hub. Yeah.
So do you find then that the summer is more kind of building the business side in terms of the kits and stuff like that, and the winter is more for your own personal creation, or are you able to balance that?
I do hook in the summer too. And now I have in my little studio downtown, I have a little space that's just my own, that has some air conditioning, so I can, because the one at home gets really hot, so I can come here and hook, and it's pretty good. So yeah, I hook all year round, but in the winter, it's sort of like I say the winter is made for making, you know, it's really a time to bear down. And so, yeah, in the winter I think, I can't say, I mean, an artist themselves often doesn't know what part of their work is important and what isn't, but I feel like it's the time where I get really focused. Yeah.
Yeah, you have more thinking time maybe sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find for me sometimes too much thinking time is not a good thing, because then I get caught up in my head, and it's hard for me sometimes to get it out. Like I have a sense of what I want to do, and I'm not sure how to do it or something. And I've been like that for the last probably couple of months now, actually, sort of being at the cottage and being pretty isolated. And I've just finally had kind of a breakthrough the other couple of days ago. So I'm like, oh, good.
I'm with you there, though. I think that if you think too much about what you're going to do and what you're going to make, I like, just show up and make something, and then in the making of that something, the other ideas will come. I think I'm with you. You know.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to produce some really crappy stuff to sort of get some glimmer of direction that is beautiful in it, and I think that's also, frankly, part of the enjoyment of creating some ugly stuff sometimes. You know.
Yeah, it is. I agree. Like, you're not going to love every piece. And then sometimes I create something and I make it, and when I first finish it, I think, you know, ooh, okay. And then, like, I have a piece here now, and every time I walk by it, like after it's been up for about a month, and now I walk by it and I'm like, oh, there's something better about it than I thought, right? So
Yeah.
that happens to me too. So it can go either way. So I never judge them right away. Like sometimes I take them off and I think, oh, this is so good. I feel like,
And let me guess, those are the ones you don't sell for years.
I know. And sometimes they just hang around. And then sometimes after you look at them for a while, you think, why was I so in love with that? I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I find exactly the same thing. And it's funny because I try not to judge either, but often at the end of the day, my husband will say, well, did you have a good day at the studio? And I'm like, I don't know yet. Like I have to wait tomorrow morning and looking at it fresh to see if I actually produced anything or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because invariably I find the same thing. Like the pieces that I just love are the ones I have a year later, and the ones that I'm sort of not sure about are the ones that seem to sell. So
Yeah.
I guess they were all finished.
Do you ever get a chill when you finish something? Like, do you ever get that feeling? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's when I'm one of these artists too that typically has no problem selling my work, and I don't feel a need to keep a lot of it because I enjoy the act of doing it. That's the therapy, and then the fact that someone else has got it on their wall, I think is super cool. But occasionally there is a piece where you're like, oh, there's a part of me that wants to keep this one.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you think, oh, how did I do that? Like every once in a
I'll
while.
never be able to do it again.
Yeah, it doesn't happen every time I'm in the studio, mind you, but like when it does happen, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful feeling.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool part of, I think, creating with your hands too. I think there's something just very, I don't know, therapeutic even just by the fact of, with so much brain work with computers and stuff, to be able to actually create something with your hands and get your fingers dirty and smell the paint or the wool or whatever you're working with, right? And then kind of at the end of it, even just that act is therapeutic.
Mm-hmm. It is absolutely. Yeah, feels so good.
I love the quote on your website. You say something like, that you're like a mother and an author and a sister and all this kind of stuff. And then you say, like, I'm good at all of these and I'm terrible at all of these at the same time. What did you kind of mean by that?
Well, I think about when I was a young mother, especially as a young mom. A lot of times, your children would want your attention, and you were really busy being an artist, right? Or sometimes, or your sister would want to go out to lunch, and you were busy being an artist. Like you as an artist, I think you're often compelled to make stuff. Like you just have this strong drive. And so I often had a lot of guilt around that. I think so that's one of the things. Like I was a good mom and I'm a good sister, but being an artist competes with it. Or sometimes like being a daughter can compete with being a sister. Do you know what I mean? Like the roles in our lives compete with each other sometimes for time. And because I don't really go for the whole balance thing. Like I live my life, I'm completely invested in what I'm doing, like 100%, right? And with my family, and you care about your community, your family, your health, your work, but I don't divide them up. It's all part of what I do.
Yeah, it's fluid. It
Sometimes
moves from one thing to another.
it does. Thank you. Yes, it does. It's very fluid. And so sometimes I get mixed up with being one when I really should be being the other. And there are times when I should have been being an artist when I was 12 hours at a hockey rink, right?
Yeah.
Weekend after weekend after weekend. So, that the roles compete with each other. Yeah. I don't think that's we were talking about this somewhere recently, and a woman said to me, I don't think that's just true for artists. I think that's true for everybody.
I think it's fundamentally true for entrepreneurs. And I think, because I ran a marketing firm for many years as well, and I had the
Yeah.
same sort of thing. And I think artists fundamentally are entrepreneurs, right? Versus working for somebody and you go in and you do your hours. And it's, I think, sometimes easier to sort of say, well, it's the end of the work day and I'm going to leave my work, as opposed to being an entrepreneur, being an artist. Your brain is always thinking about what are you going to do next and how are you going to build it and how are you going to drive forward, or what new things are you going to try. So I think I would agree with you. It's one of the things that's hard to finish when you're supposed to finish.
Yeah, it is hard. You're like, I love my work. I bound in here in the mornings, and I'm happy and I'm excited, and I just want to get at stuff. I want to find, like right now, I want to find those frames in the basement because I want to make art for those frames, you know. Like I have 3 or 4 frames down there that I think, oh, I need to fill those. I want to fill those. And because with rug hooking, you can't, well, you can frame it after, but it's a bit difficult. You sort of really have to plan when you're framing. And like I woke up this morning thinking about that, and I just wanted to get in here and get at it, you know. Uh, you know, so I didn't bother going back to sleep. You know, I want to, I don't know, I don't want to, I don't want to separate the parts of my life. I want them to be integrated as much as I can. So for years, when my children were little, I worked from home. I had a studio in my basement, and I had a studio in my back room, I meant to say. And now I have, we just filled a big space in the basement here, and I've set up my painting studio down there so that so some of my leisure time is going to be here in my workspace, right? When I'm supposedly, or what, you know, whatever. So the things get mixed up, and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Like, I think as long as you're enjoying what you're doing, and, you know, hopefully, I feel like I've raised pretty resilient kids, and so hopefully you have too. And so that's also part of it too, right?
Yeah.
They see you're following a dream, and they see you're in a job that makes you happy and really fulfills you at so many different levels. And I think that's also a really great legacy to leave your kids.
I do too. I think it is a great legacy. And I also think it's okay for people to know that, I mean, maybe I shouldn't even say this, but I'm going to say it. I think it's okay for people to know that they're not always number one, even if they're your children. I mean, they are number one, right? We know that. That's a given. But that doesn't mean that you can't step aside and let me have this time. That's still okay. Yeah. You're still one, but you need to learn that, you know, I need to do these things too. I think that's what a family needs to be for each other. We need to step aside and let that, you know, that person.
I totally agree. And I think in some ways too, that also teaches your children that you aren't always there to pick up all of the pieces for them. They need to learn how to do that for themselves, and they learn to be a bit more, you know, self-reliant and resilient. And it doesn't mean that you're not always going to be that safety net, but you're not going to also create everything to be easy for them, because I think that's where they learn their own ability to assess risks and take risks and move forward with their own lives. And now that could just be a total justification because I just want to spend more time in the art studio. You're the therapist, you can tell me.
When they go out into the real world, they're not always to be the first to be listened to, the first to be heard, the first to be understood. You know, and they're not always going to be modeled in workplaces, in residences, or whatever. Like, you know, it's okay. I mean, not, you know.
You have to advocate for yourself, right? I mean, that's part of what you, as an artist, we have to do. And I think it's a very important thing to teach your children too.
Yes, it is. Yeah. We all have to do it.
Yeah. Excellent. So, and you also, just talking about that, you also seem to have time though to give back. You're giving back. You do calendars, I think you were saying?
Yeah, we do a calendar every year. I used to do a lot of volunteering in the community. We had a fiber art festival that I was part of for years. And I did a lot in the last, well, probably the year before COVID started. I cut back because this business started to grow quite a bit. And I just decided that I really wanted to focus. Right. So I haven't been doing as much volunteer work, but we do like this Black Friday, instead of having a sale, we gave 10% of all our sales to local charities, you know, so I give back in that way. And we do the calendar. We sell calendars every year. And then between me and the printer who makes them, because he gives them to us at cost, we decide who gets the funding from the calendar. So yeah, we do find ways. I just decided that I was going to find ways to give back that were involving my work instead of me out at meetings and going and stuff, because I'm really not a very good meeting person. Yeah. Are you a good meeting?
Well, it's about what you want to do, right? Well, and I think it's great too to support your own community. I think it's important as well, right? The community supports you as an artist, and it's nice to be able to give back and support your own community again.
Yeah. And I live in a really good community, you know. My son always calls it a humble town. And I think it is. Like, it's a It is. There's a lot of humility in this town. There's a lot of good people who support each other, right? And I have
Mhm.
great friends. We don't have a huge artist community. We have we have some. It's not like there aren't artist studios all over the place, but throughout the province of Nova Scotia, of course, there's a huge artist
Right.
community. But yeah, it is a good community. So you do want to. I mean, why wouldn't you want to
Yeah.
give back?
For
Yeah.
sure. Well, it's interesting too. You were talking about, and the question kind of came up: how do you balance, how do you balance kind of kids and painting, or having kids and having a full-time art career, and then also bringing in the volunteer stuff? But like you say, as much if you can integrate those things so that they kind of feed each other and they don't take away, I think that's
Yeah.
getting that balance is tricky. But I think that's really the success, right?
Yeah, that's right. So like for us to make a calendar, it's an easy thing. It takes us a morning to put it together, really, and to think about it.
Yeah.
And then it takes us, some time to sell it, and then we ship them. And it does take time, but it's something that we can do that um, it doesn't take you away from it doesn't take you away from the thing that you're passionate about and the thing that you love. Yeah.
Yeah, I always say that inherently I'm a very self-indulgent person. Like I do the things I love to do, and if I'm not loving them and they're not really feeding me, then I just don't want to do them anymore.
I'm same
But
way. Yeah.
it seems to be working. Well, I
Yeah.
think that's about creating that balance and not feeling like you have to separate all those things, right? Because they feed a different piece of you.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. I think it's good. I think that's what it really means, the whole do what you love really
Hmm.
means. I don't think that everybody gets the chance to just do what they love and make a living. It isn't that easy. Like
Yeah,
you know, I like I'm cautious about telling people to quit their job and just go do it, because it's like a job is way easier in the sense that you working for 8 hours, and you know what you're doing, and you're getting a paycheck. um
yeah,
but because when you're an entrepreneur and an artist, those two things, you're working a lot. Like you're working night and day, and like you said, you're always thinking about it. But when you once you have decided that you're going to do that, then it's do what you love. Like for example, we've had this thing called Pattern of the Month Club, and we've had it for years, and it's been going on for years, and we have highs and lows with it. But I find it hard to give up things that sort of, they are income generating and customers are used to it. But like just this week, I decided my heart's not in this club anymore. Like my heart is in something else. Like
yeah.
I want to other things, and I want to, I want to create, like there's things that I've been wanting to create, products for our customers that I haven't been able to create, and things I wanted to build that I haven't been able to focus on. And I think that um, once you have a business, then you know that things are going okay, then you really can focus on doing, if you keep focusing on doing what you love, you'll keep having growth. But
I
if
think
you
so
keep
too. And
focusing,
yeah, well, and I think too, like I think you're right. When your heart's not in it, and you decide, which is sometimes a challenging and bold thing to do, decide not to move forward anymore with that, it does open up opportunities for new things to fill that gap too. Like
yeah,
you're not going to have any extra time. The reality is, probably knowing the way I even just know you from this last half an hour conversation, you're not going to have extra
no,
time. You're going to fill it with other new different things.
yeah. Yeah, you are. And if you have extra time for a while, well, then that's just a bonus, because if extra time always leads you to new ideas. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, the
Do you
other thing too,
any
I always like to caution too, like just because you do what you love, like with any job, there's also the stuff that you don't love doing, right? Like
yeah.
nobody probably loves doing their input tax credits, but it's a pretty critical part of the success of your business. So,
Yeah.
if you can enjoy and love 95% of what you do, and the 5% is the business stuff that sometimes isn't so great, but pretty
Yeah.
good balance still.
Pretty good. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, there are always things that you think, that's not for me. But and I also encourage people, if there is something about your business that you really hate, just like see if you can hire someone for 3 hours a week to help you with that. Like just start,
Yeah.
because that really made a difference for me. That 3 hours, of someone doing my books really opened up time, because it was taking me 6 or 7 hours, first of all, to
Yeah.
probably, right? And then that would open up time and space. And that's how we get growth. Like if you're always just working in your business, you can't be working on it. You can't be
I think that,
growing.
yeah, I think that's a really critical part. Like, and it's one of those classic things. It's a bit of a chicken and the egg because people say, well, I would like to outsource that stuff, but I can't afford to outsource it. But the reality is once you start to outsource it, you have more time to build on things that only you can do, right? Like you're saying, like build new products or sell more, or, my husband likes to kind of go, like when we're looking at expenses, it's like, okay, that would be one 12 by 12 inch painting. It sort of puts it into perspective a little bit about really not that expensive. And if I can free up my time to make one more painting, then that's going to be a good thing for the business.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
12 by 12.
And so you write as well, right? You've written 7 books.
Yeah, I've written 7 books, but they're all about rug hooking, pretty much, except for the one that I have coming out now is called Meditations for Makers, and it's daily affirmations for creative people. So it's
cool.
New. Every Sunday I do this thing. I write this Sunday letter. It's my newsletter. So I was a blogger years ago. I used to do blog. I kept a blog for 5 years. I wrote every day, and it's still up on my website. It's it's older now, but it's still there. And my old blog. And then I have a newsletter. And I just decided about a year ago or a year and a half ago, I'm going to write to the newsletter the way I did the blog. I'm not going to use the newsletter just to sell product or let the people know what I got in. I'm going to talk to people. So I started doing that, and I write a Sunday letter, and I usually do it Sunday mornings. I just write about what's on my mind and sort of a lot about art and creativity and making, kind of the kinds of things we're talking about here today. And then I started doing that, and then out of that came me writing down these little notes all the time. So I've been working, well, it must have been 2 years now because it's been a while. So I have most of them made, and it's going to be sketches. So that's my new book. And then the other books are, some of them are how to, some of them are about being an artist. There's a variety, and they all sort of, it's about rug hooking, art, and creativity. That's the focus of my writing. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you.
You pack a lot into your day. You're making me feel like I'm a lazy, slovenly artist.
Well, I have a lot of help. Like I've always hired help for like maybe from year 2. I've had some help. So, and right now we have 4 full-time people who work in the studio, and then we have some people who are part-time. And so they do a lot of the administration, and they do all the making of the kits. And my job is to make rugs and to write. So that's, really a privilege. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. It's awesome. I love it.
So we're almost at the end of our time because I have to keep it within an hour.
Yeah.
But I always like to do these kind of Kate's quick questions. So just a couple of words. So if you had one word to describe your work, what would it be?
It's love, I think. Love. Yeah.
That's a cool answer. I like that. If you could only use 2 colors in your craft, which colors would they be?
Oh. Red. And maybe white.
Canada colors. That's cool.
Yeah, they are. I wasn't thinking that. Yeah, I was thinking of, and I was thinking about, sometimes I do single color abstracts, and I like doing them in whites, and I like doing them in reds. So that's what I was thinking about.
Beautiful. And do you have a favorite artist or someone that you kind of look to for inspiration?
I have a lot that I like. I really love the work of like Alex Colville and Christopher Pratt. Very different from my work. I mean, they haven't had any real, they have different kinds of lines. I love that work. I love Matisse too.
Mm-hmm.
Love like that he made those cutouts, and I love how he just has like, and that he wasn't well all his life, but he just kept working, yeah.
I can actually definitely see when you said Matisse, I instantly came to those kind of collages and the cutouts he was doing because I don't know, the forms and the shapes they almost feel like they're designed for rug hooking.
Yeah, they are really, aren't they? Yeah,
Yeah,
they're beautiful.
Yeah. And okay, so last one then. What would if you had ability to do anything you want, what would your big hairy ass goal be?
Whew. I don't know. I do everything almost.
Sounds like it. Sounds like
I really try. One of the things we're doing now is we're making a little magazine for the studio, and that's going to be really fun. We're making this
Oh, cool.
50-page magazine that we can put in every package that goes out so that people have something, like it's going to be free. It's like a free, I just thought if I was going to do some advertising, what would I do? So, and I have a graphic designer that works with me, and she does all kinds of things, but that's one of the things that she does. And so she's making this beautiful little magazine that we're just going to give away to people, because really, like, I guess I just want to have more people making rugs, because when people make rugs, they're happy. A lot of the
Yeah.
time. Not a cure-all,
Yeah.
but it's a good, healthy thing to contribute to your life. And when it brings community, it brings joy, it brings people into your life. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Yeah, well, I will
Yeah.
definitely be reaching out because I want to do one with my daughter. So, because she was looking at it, it was so hard to find one that wasn't a super cheesy designs, and I love your design. So that's why I haven't done it yet, because there's so many beautiful patterns. I haven't figured out which one I want yet.
Thank
So
you, Kate.
just to confirm, you're at hookingrugs.com, right?
Yep. Yep.
Is your website?
Bookingrugs.com.
Yeah, and on there you've got your classes and your patterns and your kits, and I'm assuming you can get all your wool and everything from you as well, right?
We have, yeah, there's like, there's a lot of products on there. Yeah. With all your wool, hooks, frames, whatever you need. Yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's amazing. I've just really loved talking to you, so thank you so much for taking the time, and especially because I know
Yeah.
you're anxious to get to your frames, and it's been lovely. And yeah, when I come out your way, I'm definitely going to come and check out your store, because
Yeah.
that'll be really exciting when we
Yeah.
can travel again.
Yeah. When we can try. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you too. It was just a lovely conversation. So natural.
That was super fun. Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, have a great day. Bye.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
So that was fabulous, and thank you so many people for joining us. And thanks for all the questions. So I didn't answer all the questions. I tried to incorporate them into the conversation. But thank you so much. A reminder to check her work out at hookingrugs.com. They are stunning if you haven't been to her website. So I personally, truly am very excited to start doing something. Very excited. And next week we've got Lori Scantos, who's going to be our guest. And just as a reminder, that will be on Friday at 11 o'clock instead of Thursday, because I've got an appointment. And other than that, have a fabulous day. Thank you so much for joining me. And once again, if you have any artists that you would like me to interview, or if you yourself would like to be part of the show, then reach out to me, DM me, and we'll see if we can make something happen. Thank you so much, and have a fabulous day.